Day 17, Patriarchs, Genesis 33 through 34, Job 23 through 24, Proverbs 3 verses 13 through 18. Let's begin. Genesis 33:34. Then Jacob, lifting up his eyes, saw Esau arriving, and with him 400 men. And he divided the sons of Leah and Rachel, and of both the handmaids. And he placed the 2 handmaids and their children at the beginning. Truly, Leah and her sons were in the second place. Then Rachel and Joseph were last. And advancing, he reverenced prostrate on the ground 7 times, until his brother approached. And so Esau ran to meet his brother, and he embraced him. And drawing him by his neck and kissing him, he wept. And lifting up his eyes, he saw the women and their little ones, and he said, What do these want for themselves, and are they related to you? He responded, These are the little ones that God has given as a gift to me, your servant. Then the handmaids and their sons approached and bowed down. Likewise Leah, with her sons, came near. And when they had reverenced similarly, last of all, Joseph and Rachel reverenced. And Esau said, What are these companies that I have been meeting? He responded, So may I find favor before my lord. But he said, I have plenty, my brother, let these be for yourself. And Jacob said, I beg you, let it not be so. But if I have found favor in your eyes, receive a small present from my hands. For I have looked upon your face as I would look upon the countenance of God. Be gracious to me. And take the blessing which I have brought to you, and which God, who bestows all things, has given as a gift to me. Accepting it reluctantly, at the insistence of his brother. He said, Let us go on together, and I will accompany you on your journey. And Jacob said, My lord, you know that I have with me tender little ones, and sheep, and cows with young. If I cause these to labor too much in walking, all the flocks will die in one day. May it please my lord to go before his servant. And I will follow gradually in his steps, as much as I see my little ones to be able, until I arrive to my lord in Seir. Esau responded, I beg you, that at least some of the people who are with me may remain to accompany you on the way. But he said, There is no need. I have need of one thing only, to find favor in your sight, my lord. And so Esau returned that day, by the way that he had arrived, to Seir. And Jacob went to Succos, where, having built a house and pitched tents, he called the name of that place Succos, that is, tents. And he crossed over to Salem, a city of the Shechemites, which is in the land of Canaan, after he returned from Mesopotamia of Syria. And he lived near the town. And he bought the part of the field in which he had pitched his tents from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 lambs. And erecting an altar there, he invoked upon it the most strong God of Israel. Then Dinah, the daughter of Leah, went out to see the women of that region. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the leader of that land, had seen her, he fell in love with her. And so he seized her and slept with her, overwhelming the virgin by force. And his soul was closely bound to her, and since she was sorrowful, he soothed her with flattery. And going on to Hamor, his father, he said, Obtain this girl for me as a mate. But when Jacob had heard this, since his sons were absent, and he was occupied in pasturing the cattle, he remained silent until they came back. Then, when Hamor, the father of Shechem, had gone out to speak to Jacob, behold, his sons arrived from the field. And hearing what had happened, they were very angry, because he had done a filthy thing in Israel and, in violating a daughter of Jacob, had perpetrated an unlawful act. And so Hamor spoke to them, The soul of my son Shechem has become attached to your daughter. Give her to him as a wife. And let us celebrate marriages with one with another. Give us your daughters, and receive our daughters. And live with us. The land is in your power, cultivate trade, and possess it. And Shechem even said to her father and to her brothers, May I find favor in your sight, and whatever you will appoint, I will give. Increase the dowry, and request gifts, and I will freely bestow what you will ask. Only give me this girl as a wife. The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father with deceit, being enraged at the rape of their sister. We are not able to do what you ask, nor to give our sister to an uncircumcised man. For us, This is unlawful and abominable. But we may succeed in this, so as to be allied with you, if you are willing to become like us, and if all the male sex among you will be circumcised. Then we will mutually give and receive your daughters as well as ours, and we will live with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not be circumcised, we will take our daughter and withdraw. Their offer pleased Hamor and his son Shechem. Neither did the young man cause any delay. In fact, he immediately fulfilled what was requested. For he loved the girl very much, and he was well known throughout his father's house. And entering at the gate of the city, they spoke to the people. These men are peaceful, and they want to live among us. Let them trade in the land and cultivate it, for, being spacious and broad, it is in need of cultivation. We will receive their daughters as wives, and we will give them ours. There is one thing that prevents so great a good, whether we will circumcise our males, imitating the ritual of their nation. And their substance, and cattle, and all that they possess, will be ours, if only we will acquiesce to this, and so, in living together, will form one people. And they all agreed to circumcise every one of the males. And behold, on the third day, when the pain of the wound was greatest, 2 of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, the brothers of Dinah, boldly entered the city with swords. And they put to death all of the males. They killed Hamor and Shechem together, taking their sister Dinah from the house of Shechem. And when they had departed, the other sons of Jacob rushed over the slain, and they plundered the city in vengeance for the rape. Taking their sheep, and herds, and donkeys, and laying waste to everything else that was in their houses and in their fields. They also took their little ones and their wives captive. When they had boldly completed these acts, Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, You have troubled me, and you have made me hateful to the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the inhabitants of this land. We are few. They, gathering themselves together, may strike me down, and then both I and my house will be wiped away. They responded, Should they abuse our sister like a prostitute? Job 23:24. Then Job answered by saying, Now again my conversation is in bitterness, and the force of my scourging weighs more heavily on me because of my mourning. Who will grant me that I might know and find him, and that I may approach even to his throne? I would place judgment before his eye, and my mouth would fill with criticism, so that I may know the words that he will answer me and understand what he will say to me. I do not want him to contend with me with much strength, nor to overwhelm me with the bulk of his greatness. Let him show fairness in response to me, and let my judgment reach to victory. If I go to the east, he does not appear. If I go to the west, I will not understand him. If I turn to the left, what can I do? I will not take hold of him. If I turn myself to the right, I will not see him. Truly, he knows my way and has tested me like gold that passes through fire. My feet have been following his footsteps. I have kept to his way and have not strayed from it. I have not withdrawn from the commands of his lips, and the words of his mouth I have hidden in my sinews. For he is alone, and no one is able to disturb his intention, and whatever his spirit wills, that he accomplishes. And when he fulfills his will in me, many other similar ones will also be present with him. And for this reason, I have been troubled at his presence, and when I consider him, I am approached by fear. God has weakened my heart, and the Almighty has confused me. Yet I have not perished because of the threatening darkness, nor has gloom covered my face. The times are not hidden from the Almighty. Even those who know him do not know his days. Some have crossed the boundaries, plundered the flocks, and given them pasture. They have driven away the donkey of orphans, and have taken the cow from the widow as collateral. They have undermined the way of the poor, and have pressed together the meek of the earth. Others, like wild asses in the desert, go forth to their work. By watching for prey, they obtain bread for their children. They reap a field that is not their own, and they harvest a vineyard that they have taken by force. They send men away naked, having taken the clothing of those who have no covering in the cold. These are wet with the mountain rain, and, having no covering, they embrace the rocks. They have used violence to deprive orphans, and they have robbed the poor common people. From the naked and those who do not have enough clothing, and from the hungry, they have taken away sheaves of grain. They take their midday rest among the stockpiles of those who, though they have trodden the winepresses, suffer thirst. In the cities, they cause the men to groan and the spirit of the wounded to cry out, and so God does not allow this to go unpunished. They have been rebellious against the light. They have not known his ways, nor have they returned by his paths. The killer of men rises at first light. He executes the destitute and the poor, but, in truth, he is like a thief in the night. The eye of the adulterer waits for darkness, saying, "No eye will see me," and he covers his face. He passes through houses in the night time, just as they had agreed among themselves in the daytime, and they are ignorant of the light. If sunrise should suddenly appear, it is treated by them like the shadow of death, and they walk in darkness, as if in light. He is nimble on the surface of water. His place on land is to be accursed. May he not walk by way of the vineyards. May he cross from the snowy waters to excessive heat, and his sin, all the way to hell. Let mercy forget him. His charm is worms. Let him not be remembered, but instead be broken like an unfruitful tree. For he has fed on the barren, who does not bear fruit, and he has not done good to the widow. He has pulled down the strong by his strength, and when he stands up, he will not have trust in his life. God has given him a place for repentance, and he abuses it with arrogance, but his eyes are upon his ways. They are lifted up for a little while, but they will not continue, and they will be brought low, just like all things, and they will be taken away, and like the tops of the ears of grain, they will be crushed. But if this is not so, who is able to prove to me that I have lied and to place my words before God? Proverbs 3 verses 13 through 18. Blessed is the man who finds wisdom, and who advances to prudence. Her acquisition is better than trading in silver, and her fruit is better than the first and purest gold. She is more precious than all riches, and all that can be desired cannot prevail in comparison to her. Length of days is at her right hand, and at her left hand is wealth and glory. Her ways are beautiful ways, and all her paths are peaceful. She is a tree of life to those who overtake her, and he who shall take hold of her is blessed.